First item, ordinance 17-0, rezoning 2164 Ted Doris Road, Robertson County, 125, parcel 208.02, rezoned from commercial C3 to commercial C1. You want to tell us what they're doing?
Certainly, Mayor. The applicant is actually under contract with a buyer for this property up on Ted Doris Road. And to refresh your memory, this was owned by Millersville. He passed away recently, and the family's just looking to dispose of their assets and all. We've had lengthy conversations with Mrs. brother, who's brokering the deal, as well as the buyer, and they're very concerned that if they close on it, they'll be hamstrung or limited on the uses that they can put into the building, as well as building additional facilities on the property. So they're looking to broaden their allowable or permitted uses from the C3 into the C1. And we've taken a look at some of the other uses up on Ted Doris Road, as well as some of the other zonings. And there are other C1 zonings up the road there. There's also a light industrial parcel that's zoned, although it's vacant. There's residents up there. There's a broad scope of warehousing, as well as all things chrome up there. That the idea is that staff is looking at what are appropriate development options up there. And frankly, the C3 is restrictive, but would be appropriate on certain parcels, particularly the high visibility parcels. So as you head up further on Ted Doris Road, and particularly crowning the hill, we don't see that there's, I don't see that there's much highway intensive commercial opportunity up into there, particularly some of the longer and deeper parcels. So I'm supporting and recommending the approval from C3 to C1.
Anybody got any questions?
What's allowed in C1 is not allowed in C3.
C1 is pretty much any commercial use, whereas C3 is restricted to hotels, restaurants, and like retail and service providers that are generally for high traffic drive-by customers. And being tucked up at the end of Ted Doris Road, we don't see that. Although interestingly, at the next planning commission, we'll be discussing some of the opportunities if we can extend Ted Doris Road up to Swift Road and what might be involved in that. So that could change the dynamic, but that would be a future endeavor looking down the road. But
That'd be increasing, that'd be making a road name on it in our city limits, correct?
we could expand our city limits. It's certainly within our urban growth boundary. And that would open up a lot more traffic on that roadway. But to your first question about the commercial, what's interesting is in the C3, there's specific prohibitions against building supplies and sales and service providers, including plumbing, heating, AC, and the buyers looking at this property evidently have a tenant that is a major service and sales provider. They won't share the information, obviously, but right now they would be prohibited under the C3 restrictions.
So all things chrome is on that 208.
No,
They're on two parcels.
they're on 207.
207. Okay.
Yes, they're on 207. I believe they also have a portion of the 206.
What is 215?
There's several buildings that live there. I just wanted one. If that's 207, all the ones that he got his building on.
I think that's the one long building, and then he has his event center on 206. The one with all the overhead bays.
Even though it's on C3 too.
206 is C3, 207 is C1. And that allows for the light manufacturing that he has in there, as well as the retail sales and some of his production.
$215. What is that?
That's also C3. Now, 215, 216, and some of the properties, in my opinion, closer to Bethel Road or fronting the interstate would be appropriate for the C3, which is, those are businesses that rely upon the higher visibility properties, that you get the drive-by traffic, hotels, restaurants, and whatnot. But frankly, when you're touching the back, like 208.2 and .01, those are, I just don't see those as having a great deal of opportunity for the highway intensive commercial.
What's that building on the back of 208, always back up there? It's like a big barn or garage or something.
That's the property that's in question here that we're looking to do. That was All Pack, that it was a packing and shipping supply company that also had some retail sales as well. But they built their first building all the way to the rear, thinking that they would build more towards the front. Another thing too is with this particular parcel, there's a development agreement in place that any future construction of buildings on this parcel will require them to tie into the city sewer system, which will mean that they'll then construct a sewer line down Ted Doris Road from their property and connect to our facilities at Bethel Road.
And you're talking about 208.
208.02. Now 208, I'm not familiar with just 208.
Oh, what about 208.2? Is that one where that building's on?
208.02 is the one with that nice building all the way to the back. Yes. But the benefit of these folks coming in, if they want to expand their facility, is that they're required to connect to the city sewer system, which then means that we now have pipe in the ground that others will be required to connect to. And there's plenty of sewer capacity in that area. The real challenge right now is water. But we're working through options on that now too.
David?
I just got one question. I know you didn't write the background on this, on item 2. I was just sort of raised a little concern when I read it. Says here, I'd like to caution us to look at the vision of this area, which we're talking about now, and how long and not rezone partial just for the sake of getting development there. Do you have a little insight on that, sort of?
Okay, Karen and I have discussed that. We have a slightly different vision of development opportunities that, and we brought this forward at the planning commission meeting, and we chatted about this, that should we limit the development opportunities on all of Ted Doris Road to that highway interchange intensive, or should we have transitional development as it moves further away from those high visibility properties, which that's my opinion, although this was visioned over the last couple of decades that this would be a high revenue and tax base for the city there, but it's taking an awful long time. Frankly, I can see that as it begins to develop and you get hotels and restaurants, then maybe some of the surrounding uses will change and transition into that. But in the meantime, it's my opinion, and I can't speak for Karen, but this is at least an opportunity to move development forward on that corridor on Ted Doris Road, and then let the uses catch up as Ted Doris develops.
Well, the uses will catch up until the water gets there.
That's a big part of it, yes.
I mean, you can't,
Well, and other developers come in and build their facilities. Obviously, a restaurant, an operator isn't gonna construct a restaurant without a hotel nearby, or without, the traffic that will generate the kind of.
but none of that can generate unless there's water there.
Yes,
I mean, it's the major holdup.
yes it is.
Until water gets there, no matter what you got, it's on there.
So in the meantime, for the next 2, 3, 4 years until we have water, do we take development as it's coming forward now, or do we hold everybody off until the infrastructure is ready for them? And that
They can't build till the infrastructure's there.
correct. and that's, that Karen wants you to be aware of and that's actually one of the conversations that she and I have had, is that does the commission want the property owners to wait until they can build to our vision, or do we want to allow them to begin some development up there that doesn't exactly fit our vision yet?
My
Does that make
understanding,
sense?
my understanding, except by the planning commission, that we have agreed to look at what the city's vision should be, or at least make a recommendation to the city commission as to what the vision of Ted Dorff Road should be, including the connection on to Swift Road. We're looking at proposals and just different ideas. One of the things that, Mr. Gregory and I both sit on that committee, on that commission, was, will we have water up there? How will we get water up there? Now, we have sewer, but the water issue is obviously the biggest drawback of hotels and restaurants. So,
Well, that's been a drawback for several years. That's the reason one of the
good
subdivision one of the subdivisions wanted going out there off South Williams Road, couldn't go in because of the water.
Right. And we know now that there are, 6-inch water lines that go from White House over to Greenbrier that we're not allowed to tap into.
Actually, there's a 4 and an 8.
Four
And-
and 8.
And they are supplying commitments to Greenbrier and Ridgetop.
So in other words, the planning commission, which we'd like you to attend also to get your input on it. I think at our next planning commission meeting, we're going to be discussing what can or cannot be done, or what the timeline would be, if at all possible, to get hotels and restaurants up there.
And as part of the visioning exercise, I think we touched on that at the last strategic planning that MTAS assisted us with. And perhaps that's another exercise we should spend some more time in again.
Well, when all of this was zone C3, I think it was in a hope to keep certain properties around the interstate viable for motels and restaurants, but they're not coming.
Certainly not, they're restricted on the west side.
On the, well, that's what I was fixing to say, on the other side of the interstate, a motel could have built there 15 years ago, there's plenty of water. They're not coming there either, and we're just talking about on the other side of the interstate. So I think what you're saying, do we want to leave it all C3 and just wait until a restaurant or a motel or something of like, something similar comes to build on these parcels? Or do we get back further away from the main road, which 208.2 is back further away from the main road, and open that up to something a little less restricted to get business up there? And the more businesses that pop up there, the demand for water is gonna become greater. And the more the demand, the more White House is gonna have to, the water department's gonna have to look at fixing the issue.
And I'm looking for direction from the city commission on how you want me handling future applications and our down the road visioning on that, so that I have a good understanding what you want.
But how do you approve a site plan without the water being there?
As long as it meets.
Before, there's enough to flush toilets and to turn on faucets. The biggest issue is fire suppression, sprinklers in particular, and fire hydrants.
And that's
And that's what's hamstringing or restricting the commercial development on the west side of the interstate.
as long as you stay under a certain footage, you don't have to have sprinklers.
And the use and the size.
So I mean, I know all things Chrome, they was supplied enough water to meet the requirements,
Just enough.
but it met them. So, I mean, it's not like there's no water there, it's just not.
There's not enough water to put a hotel
No.
to
No.
ensure the safety of the guests. Exactly what it boils down to.
So, I mean, there's a building sitting there that was approved and built for a business. The owner got sick and passed away. I think the options are that the property just sits there stagnant, or we adjust what we're looking for to allow other businesses to come in further back off the road. I mean, there's a C1 property that abuts it that's got a pretty good sized business on it right now.
Yeah, there's a C1 property that's even closer to Bethel Road than this subject property is. So I support the change from C3 to C1 for this particular piece of property. And I think it helps the tax base for the city also. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
I think the group that's looking at buying it, that's their business, is building.
They're commercial developers. They build and own and then rent to tenants.
I would find it hard to believe that they're gonna buy 6 acres with a relatively small building on it, that far back off the road and not do something in front of it.
And that's the discussion we're having with them, yes.
Because I mean, you can't find commercial property now.
Not that close to the interstate.
Anybody have any other questions? All right, item number 3, ordinance 17-681, amending chapter 90 of the code pertaining to section 90-8, use classification system, and section 90-213, intermediate industrial district. So I guess you again, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. This is pretty much a cleanup effort on this, or an administrative effort. In this case, the city some years ago changed some of their commercial permitted uses and special exception uses. And it appears now that the racetrack doesn't have a fit, that use doesn't have a fit in any of our zoning classes right now. It's always been felt it was appropriate to identify it as industrial out there and to promote industrial development within that vicinity for a number of different reasons. But at this point, we're looking to modify the industrial 2 uses to allow group assembly by special exception approval from the BZA. And in this case, it would essentially make the racetrack conforming with the zoning out there. It would also, because right now it's zone C3, which doesn't have a group assembly use any longer. That was changed some years ago. I'm not sure why. That was before my time. But as a pretty heavy intensive use, noise, the traffic, and all the folks there, and that you don't expect to see, residential development around it and all that. So to have that as a basis for an industrial area and then expand out as you move further away from it, radial out to less intensive light industrial, and then maybe some commercial out there around Gideon and Bethel Road and all that. So trying to work with a transitional sort of vision of how the West Bethel Road area will be developed in the future. So to fit the racetrack into one of our zoning classes, we're looking to include group assembly as a special exception. Not that they're gonna have to go through that process, but just so it has a home for its use out there. Now, the planning commission did ask to remove drag strips from the group assembly allowable uses. One of the planning commissioners felt that that was just too intense for industrial or industrial 2. So that was requested to be removed. That was approved by the planning commission. So it comes to the city commission for the workshop and then the second reading if you decide to move forward.
Any questions?
We
We went over this pretty good.
Yeah, we went over it pretty good.
In our initial package, so.
Item number 4, review of T-Dot contract for phase 1 of the multimodal project on 31. You know anything about that one?
I know a little bit about it. I've been involved in blended fashion with this. If you recall, we applied, I believe it was late last year, over the winter, for the first phase of a sidewalk and multi-use path, what they call a multimodal path. So essentially, we're looking at a 5-foot sidewalk on one side of 31W Louisville Highway, and on the other side, a 10 or 12-foot multi-use path. That would probably require bridges across both Slaters Creek crossings. But the first phase is pretty limited, just from City Hall to the community center and the library. We are phasing this out so that eventually we may climb our way up the ridge as well as go all the way to the south to the town limits. Millersville is also looking at transportation alternative programming similarly to us. And then perhaps we can even meet our sidewalks somewhere along the way at our city limits. Essentially, we don't have any sidewalks to speak of. There are a couple of sections in between the two bridges that are the state hasn't maintained them very well, and it would be nice to be able to get more walkability throughout the downtown core, which frankly would promote more economic development, businesses, and the kids might even be able to walk and ride their bikes now instead of the parents having to drive, just a mile up the road to pick them up. But to get us more active out there, there are a lot of good reasons to promote sidewalks and multi-use paths here. Unfortunately, the grant came in a little lower than what we had requested, but the MPO, we're in discussions with them about helping us out with that. With some of the funding that we need to match, similarly to the lights up at the interchange. MPO ended up coming up with $500,000 to meet our 50% commitment. So they may be able to help us out with the sidewalks as well. But we've got some upfront work to begin, including the environmental study, that's the NEPA that you see mentioned in there. And then we'll work through the design and before we get into the actual construction phase. This is probably a 2 or 3 year project for this first phase before you'll see a sidewalk done. But all of this takes time, especially when we're spending someone else's money.
Is that grant, is that a matching grant or is that what?
Typically, it's an 80-20 split, but in this case, we may have to put more up depending upon what the numbers
Which
come
one's
in.
80, which one's 20?
They're giving us $1 million right now. We had originally budgeted, I think, like 1.4. We were hoping that we'd get a little more from the state, but the MPO may be able to offset that for us.
So we've got to come up with 20% of that $1 million?
Yes, at least 20% of the $1 million, and then whatever additional cost there may be, minus what the MPO helps out with. And in fact, we're even looking at phasing the first phase into like a 1A and a 1B, and just doing the sidewalk on one side at this program, and then the next funding round, hopefully more dollars to do the other side of Louisville Highway, and then we'll start working on the other phases.
Well, I know, as I was reading through this right here, it calls the city as an agency. And it says there that we're the ones responsible for the money, correct?
Yes, we are the agency.
We're agency, so it is responsible for the money. It just didn't say how much.
We don't
It said
know
all
yet.
preliminary engineering, agency pays, environmental clearance by agency, right of way by agency, utility coordination by the agency, and constructed by agency and project.
We'll have a better idea as to what those numbers are as we move this forward. But we need to move it forward in order, and we need to start the project with the state in order to identify those numbers. So we're looking at the commission to approve the initial funding, and I believe that it's gonna need to come out of reserves, it wasn't budgeted, so,
In your estimate, how much?
I don't know.
NEPA, what does that consist of?
NEPA, that's,
Any
yes,
national
NEPA,
EPA,
National Environmental Protection Agency. There are
like the
pretty
creek?
high standards for the creeks, for the shoulders, for trees. It's pretty comprehensive, especially since we're gonna have a couple of bridges over at Slater's Creek. So they take a look at like the abutments and even the shade of the bridges over the waters. And it's, in my opinion, onerous, but if we want state and federal dollars, then we have to do that level of environmental study.
Mr. Mayor, when we built the library, did we have to have an EPA study also, do you recall?
No, because we didn't use any federal money. It was all
All
county.
county.
It was county money and, Memorial
Donations.
Foundation, and then the city paid whatever, the rest of it was $200,000. So the NEPA only gets involved if there's federal money.
So obviously, we didn't run into any problems as far as the streams, we didn't have the flood zones.
With
The
the library, no. The engineer took care of all of that, filed all the documents that had to, all the testings for the compaction test to make sure it was up out of the flood zone. They took care of all that, and then the builder, he had to get, permits and have silt fences up to protect the creek. So we didn't have any part in that. It was all managed by our architect and performed by the builder.
This $40,000, Michael, is it just for the EPA study, is that what that's?
That's my understanding, yes. And I believe we're gonna use our consultant engineer for some of the initial planning of this and coordinating the bid documents and whatever else, as they're already under contract with us. Excuse me, please.
From what I understand, this is a pretty long process. This is just one of several steps that we're gonna have to go through in order to, receive the grant. I don't think there's anybody that's gonna say that sidewalks aren't needed. I go up down the highway every day and I see people walking right on the white line every day.
Now, I asked for sidewalks 5 years ago. And I was seeing people down here at Greenhaven Apartments. We have community activities at a community center. Then I see women pushing babies from Greenhaven up 31 that.
On that rumble strip?
And that's when I came back to the commission. So we need sidewalks. My main concern with sidewalks is safety. Down here at the KOA, little boy got hit by a car because the road is narrow. You got the Shell station here and then the road is narrow. And he was on his bicycle, somebody turned in. It just hit him enough to knock him off his bicycle. So I heard about that, so that's my main reason for this, get sidewalks in the city.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, go ahead. All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm here. If you want to put me on speakerphone.
You're on speakerphone.
Hi, guys. Sorry I couldn't be there. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, yes.
Hi, Karen.
Okay, yeah, I'm on delay over here. I'm sorry.
Have you got something on?
Do I have something on?
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise.
Sorry, turn the YouTube on. Let me see if it's the fan. Hold on.
Now, tell us YouTube. So, turn the YouTube volume down.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Hold on.
is now.
Okay. No, I just wanted to clarify, the contract that we have in front of us is the general contract that we have to sign with GDOT for the $1 million grant and the entire project. I have already spoken with the MPO. There is additional money to help us go ahead and pay for the engineering and that portion of it. However, we do have to pay for the NEPA because that is ready to go now, and the actual money from the MPO is not. This is your first phase. You asked me for sidewalks when I first was hired, and this is the first phase of probably 3 or 4. We're going to do as much as we can with the $1 million that they've given us. I'm also going to ask the MPO to see if maybe they can give us a little bit more towards the construction so we can actually finish the first phase all the way through. Originally, I applied for $1.3 million. We only got $1 million. But coming up next is we're going to have to amend the budget in order to pay for the NEPA, which is $40,000, and that will be coming out of the reserves from streets, not from the general fund. This will be paid for by the street fund. I just didn't want you to get confused as to what we were looking at tonight.
I have one question. This is more than just sidewalks, is it not?
Correct.
This is also streetscape as well.
It's sidewalks, streetscape, curb and gutter, the whole thing.
Okay.
Where's it at? Where's the distance?
I think the first phase is from the library to the elementary school.
Is that what it is, Karen? Karen, it is from the, our first intention was to get it from the grammar school down to the library. Is that what this money is?
Yes, from the library to the middle school, the elementary school.
Okay.
Is the scope of the project. However, we have run into a small little thing, and the glitch is that the school is owned by the school board and the county. It is not owned by us, and we cannot work on their property. I have spoken with Anthony Holt, and we will have a meeting with the school superintendent. The reason why we will have to do some work there is because it has to be ADA accessible, but it is not at this time. So we will work that out with them and have the school board actually be a partner with us when it comes down to it.
So in other words, they're gonna help us out financially on their property, correct?
On their property, correct, that's my goal.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything else you needed to say?
No, sir, unless there's other questions.
That $1 million, how much matching grant was that right there? You said 80-20. Is that correct?
It's an 80-20, correct. And that's construction dollars only.
So Karen, when we get that NEPA paid, are we, is that gonna open us up to start bids, or what are they gonna do?
Do we use it to
We will be doing that at the same time as we're advertising for, we have to advertise for an actual engineering firm. We can't just use the engineers we have. That is in the process right now. Once we get the engineering firm on board, then hopefully I can get that extra money from the MPO, at which time they will be doing the design. After the design, that's when we actually go out for bids for construction.
Okay, thank you, that's good. I don't have anything else.
anybody else? I think that's the only questions we had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Call me if you need me.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, bye.
All right, anybody got anything else on item number 4? All right, item number 5, ordinance 17-682, amending the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget to allow for the NEPA requirement on the multimodal phase 1 project to be funded. basically the same thing as the
Same
last.
thing what we just did,
So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Hang on just a minute. Yeah. All right, item number 6, resolution 17-R-15 declaring surplus seized property. Anybody got anything?
I thought we had already done this.
We do that all the time, but it's more seized property. There's a list back there somewhere that tells what it is.
I looked over it earlier.
Yeah, here's the list, it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 5 different vehicles. Everything from, pickup to Toyota, a couple Fords and Chevy. Everybody good?
Yeah, we caught up, Mr. Mayor, we caught up on, the others that we had up for surplus being sold yet. I know we had some last few months, did we catch up with?
No, we've got multiple vehicles. Those are all drug seizures and revoked for DUI seizures. There's no city assets, that's all seizures. I mean, we're selling as quick as we can, but there's 30+ vehicles out there to be sold. So
It's a pretty,
it's a lengthy process for
Yeah.
somebody. I mean, we don't have anybody specifically for selling vehicles. It falls on one person.
all right, item number 7, discussion about the red light at Bethel Road. Anybody?
We might want to put this on the next work session, because Commissioner Foley want to be part of the discussion.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, we're fine.
Anybody have a problem with that? All right, we'll just pass that one by, move it to the next work session. Item number 8, review of the 360I CMA required evaluation on the city manager and discussion of contract renewal. Does anybody have any specific questions? Has everybody looked at the evaluation?
Yeah, I don't understand how to read it in the sense I've got self-descriptions and then I've got peer descriptions.
The self-descriptions is the way Karen answered it.
Okay. And so the peer descriptions are actually the people that she
It is the commissioners and the department.
requires. So I guess what I'm saying is the peer evaluations would be more important as far as judging the performance. Is that what we're saying? Is that what I would say?
That's what I would say. I mean,
I guess, and then the next question I have, what is the average of 3 or 4? I mean,
the average on most of the peer evaluations are between
3 and 4.
3.5 and 4. There's a few of them just a tick over 4, but most of them range from 3.6 to, here's one that is 4.1.
My question is that an equalize, I guess is what I'm asking.
It is, in the front, it is what you would consider 4, if on doing your job would be to a great extent, 3 would be to some extent. So it would fall in between those. The way I would look at it myself, 3 would be average, 4 would be above average, 2 would be below average.
5 would be excellent, yes.
I've looked through the report, I don't necessarily see anything in there that causes me any great concern.
I saw nothing to be alarmed about. I just wanted to clarify manner in which to interpret this.
This first time we've done this.
Yes, and it has to do with, she has to do one every 5 years to keep her ICMA, requirements.
So we do one in 2 years, right?
Yes, we have.
We have been.
We done the last one about 2 years ago.
That's generally when our contract comes up, it's, 2 years.
Her contract runs out November the 30th, I believe. I would not want to wait till the last minute now to do an evaluation. If there's questions or problems, I would like to address them early.
Will there be other evaluations, or just this evaluation?
I don't know of any more.
We've done that before. We've always done it 2 years. Seems like.
Evaluation is 2 years ago.
We did it in-house. We printed it. It come from, a website. It's the one Hendersonville and, I think Gallatin, Portland uses. It was real similar to this. It was 4 or 5 pages long. You went down and you asked, you had 5 selections. You filled one in and it had a place for responses on the last sheet, comments. That was all put together and averaged out, much like this in Will. I mean, there's a few of in the comment sections that bothered me a little bit. The fact that, there's one that says overspending money, she overspends on budgeted items. I'd remind the commission that she doesn't spend anything that we don't approve. So she doesn't spend the money, this board does.
Absolutely.
On the first page, or section 2, the importance score, that's just the importance that the surveyee assigns to that particular question. And then the performance score is what the surveyee assigns to the city manager's performance under that section. Is that how that reads?
I believe it would.
I've got no further questions on this.
All right, I guess the next part of it would be moving on to our contract. Is there anybody have any questions or anything they want to add on that?
I read it, I'd like to, and I agree with you, we don't need to wait for last minute. This is the last contract.
It is. It is due to end,
November 30th.
yes. And it's basically a generic contract. I don't know that there's anything that's gonna change. I haven't spoken with her, about it. I think it would be up to the board to make a decision on whether we enter into a contract extension, and if anything in that contract is to change.
We have another work session in regards to this. The reason I say this is because
We can.
Mr. Cole is not here.
Like I said,
Yeah, Carol's not here.
the main reason is to get started on it early, so we don't have to make a decision in one meeting. I would hope that everyone would, and talk to Karen and see what she's thinking, give her a call. You know, I'm happy with the job that she's done. I feel like she's brought in close to $3 million in grants to the city that we otherwise may not have. The departments in the city seem to be running very well. I don't see any morale problems. I said, I feel like she, when she was hired, she accepted a pay range that she was not asking for. She was willing to accept a pay range less than what she was asking for. She has went through three years of budgets, 2 of which she has not asked for a raise. She put the employees ahead of herself. I don't think you're gonna find her asking for a raise. I think it's gonna be up to this board if they wanna give her a raise. That's totally up to the board. You know, I get around to all the cities and I go to a lot of these MPO meetings, the GNRC meetings, all the other meetings. The good things that are happening in other cities such as White House, the reason they have sidewalks and curbs and drainage up and down their highway and down 76 is because their city manager goes to these MPO meetings and he fights to get federal and state money run back into his city. And Karen does the same thing. She goes to these meetings, she does not meet a stranger, she talks to everybody in the room before she leaves. The reason the federal money and the state money and the TDOT money is starting to come back to our city is because of Karen. Not because of me, it's not because of this commission, it's because of Karen. So that's pretty much all I got to say. So, like I said, I would hope that y'all would call and talk with her. All right. Anybody have anything? Number 9 is city manager and city attorney comments. They are not here. Rod is stuck somewhere on the side of the interstate with a horse trailer broke down. So we'll go to number 10 is general discussion. Anybody?
I'm gonna say a little bit, since we're discussing Karen's contract is, I agree with what the mayor said, I appreciate what she's done for our city. And I look forward to her continuing to do more. And I look forward to myself upgrading her contract for another 2 years. And also I'm gonna ask the commission to give her a raise, we'll decide on that when we get a chance. I think she deserves it. I think she deserves everything that the commission is willing to give her. And I'm glad she's here. I'm glad she's our city manager, speaking as a citizen. As commissioner, it's an honor to hire. That's one of the votes. So I'm looking forward to going further. We've already come in seeing our city grow and develop. And I think everything's in place for that to happen. And it's good. I think it's good. Our city's looking forward to developing up in Robinson County. That's great. Our neighbors in Robinson County. So things are looking good for our city. Appreciate y'all being here. Our visitors being here to see. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the fire department and police department for their efforts Friday night. It was terrible. I was called at 1 o'clock to come out and we have to clean a ditch up across the road over here. Bobby Stone saved this lady's car because it was fixing to go underwater. So I was out in it, of course I seen the chief, I seen Brandon, and we was in a mess. Well, there was a lot of places flooded. And like I say, me and Bobby Stone was out trying to help people out too. But it was a mess and I I hope we don't have that again. So I got.
The only thing I got, I would like to, point out that in our last meeting, there was a resident that was in here that pretty well bashed our codes guy. She called him everything from a stalker to anything else she could think of. I would like everybody to know that particular resident has a file that is about as thick as that reporter right there, that dates back to 2009, which Brandon was not even here in 2009. And also, she went to court a couple of days after that and had a whole new outlook. She praised Brandon in that court session. So I'd just like everybody to know that the people that work for this city's got a tough job. And there's nobody in this city that has a tougher job than Brandon, because he can't make friends. All he can make is enemies. It doesn't matter when he goes out, somebody's not gonna be happy. Some of these people call, and some of these people get mad because the city does what the law tells them to do. Brandon is the guy that has to go out and police that. I don't envy him doing it, but he does a good job at it. And not only that, this weekend, we're having a stream cleanup. So all the people that was complaining about the stream cleanup, I hope to see them out there helping clean up the streams. Probably won't, but I hope to see them. There's a lot of people that made negative comments about the streams getting cleaned up and that it's Brandon's fault the city flooded. Well, that's not entirely Brandon's job, is not to walk up and down creeks and pick up twigs out of them. So I would like to see a lot of people come out and help. I know I'll be there.
That was it start.
Around 9.
Where we meet at.
We're meeting it's in conjunction with the city of Millersville.
Yeah.
So we're meeting at the Department of Public Works over on Cartwright Street, about 8:30. It's kicking up at 9, so anybody that's interested, there'll be signs out at the location, big yellow 4-foot signs. So we're gonna have 2 locations, one over on Mansfield Creek, over at 41 in Williamson, and then work our way into our city. And then we'll have one somewhere on 31 along Slater Street. So just look for the big yellow sign. Waders and gloves. Actually, gloves and pickers and bags will be provided, so just bring some dry boots.
Be dry for a little while.
And along with what Commissioner Doris had to say, I appreciate what the fire department, and the police department, and the public works department done the other night. There was about a 3-hour period that if you lived on Williamson Road, sorry, but that's where you stayed. There was no way out.
Question for you. What about those properties that, we've had these components up here? What effect did that rain have on it?
Well, I went through there for that night, and the ditch that's inside, it's got the catch gate in it. The water was down close to the gate catch. It wasn't nowhere up there. You can see where the water did come through, but it went out and gone.
Good.
I seen no water anywhere but 1 yard on the right-hand side, right before you go out on the right-hand side. That's the water in the yard right there a little bit. But everything else, we didn't see anything.
Well, I know,
And we went through there about what, 2:30? About 2 o'clock, 2:30?
Friday morning around, I don't know, 5 or 5:30, all the houses along the creek had water in their yard. Every one of them. I mean, there was no way it couldn't. I mean, the whole road. There was water in places on Williamson Road that I've never seen water. I've lived there for 51 years.
It was on the road. I was concerned about those houses. Did it get into those particular houses?
I didn't see it, it did. I mean,
It may have been running across some of them's yard, but I don't think it got in their house.
We haven't heard any complaints from those people or anything? was over there.
There was water in the road in front of North Point, and I've never seen water in the road from North Point that come out of the creek. I've seen it coming off the hill and cover part of the road, but I've never seen it come out of the creek onto Winston Road at North Point.
I just would have thought with the amount of rains that we had last week, that it would be this fall.
Most of their problem is not from extended rain, it's from flash floods.
Well, that's what I'm saying, more than last flood time.
A lot of drainage condition, looked like he was doing a job, because the only water I seen was down there by the, gate down there. And the gate wasn't all the way open, or didn't look like it was all the way open, and there wasn't a lot of water in there.
Well, the retention, you're talking about the retention
Little
pond.
retention pond, little basin up there.
That's not necessarily the problem, it's the ditch that runs off of the Shepherd's property across and under the road and then makes the turn down to Winston Road is the one that is flooding their property. I know the first house on the right, when you turn in the first road there, there was pretty much water all the way around his house. But it's not uncommon when Mansfield Creek gets out, they're in a flood zone, it's gonna flood. That's the reason those houses are built up so high. So, like I said, our public works, police, and fire have done a great job the other night. And it's hard because I know how many people was running up and down the roads. There was some vehicles that I counted went by my house 2 or 3 times in different directions, each just from one end to the other, just to see if they could get out.
So you need a car like that.
Yes, that's something that needs to be looked into.
Definitely needs another avenue out from there.
I would say so, if you're trapped in that,
Just for emergency
for emergency.
vehicles. There was points that I don't know that, if an ambulance had to get in there, I don't know that they could get in there. There was a Volkswagen that almost got washed into the creek down on the Millersville end. If it hadn't been for a big tree, she would have went down the creek. It washed it off the road,
That's why you got the military vehicles.
pretty much. All right, does anybody have anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Move the way here.
All those in favor?
Hey, Larry, actually, what they use up this one, this one, they use up this one. Wait. Crazy.
To the